With me now to talk about this issue is Congressman Ralph Norman, who serves the 5th District of South Carolina. Representative Norman is also a member of the Homeland Security Committee and the Committee on Oversight and Reform. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
My pleasure. Thank you, Joseph.
Well, first of all, what is your response to the comments you just heard from Ann Neuberger that this is really something that the companies should be resolving themselves?
You know, this administration has no shame. What do they take responsibility for? Yes, it's a private company, but it shows you the vulnerability of major components of our economy. Gas is one of them. They don't take ownership in anything. The federal government ought to be given some guidelines, which they haven't had. President Biden has not, when he takes questions, he really doesn't have an answer other than we're going to try to fix it. Fix what? What are his plans? He's got every other priority for spending our tax dollars on anything but cybersecurity. I haven't seen it in any of the bills that we passed. He's too busy bailing out cities that have been mismanaged. He's too busy giving contracts to people that are of the Green New Deal. And he's not dealing with the crisis. This is one of many crises that he's just ignoring, like the border and like so many others that he just doesn't take ownership with. Whether he doesn't understand it, I don't know, but it's not being handled.
What is your advice to the Biden administration at this point? How can this be something that we resolve quickly, but also prevent from happening in the future?
A couple of things. First thing you can do is open up the Keystone Pipeline. Under President Trump, we were exporting oil and natural gas. We were the #1 exporter. It makes no sense to buy something as important as gas from foreign countries that don't like us. Just because he sold out to the Green New Deal philosophy of, the world ended in 10 years, that's no reason to not open up the pipeline, and let's use our God-given natural resources that this country has to get this economy open. Secondly, the taxpayers don't deserve the high prices that they're going to be paying. I hear outrage from people all over. It's, we were at 220, 230. It's up 40 and 50%. So that's the byproduct of having the Keystone Pipeline. But as far as cybersecurity, the one thing the federal government can do is put in guidelines and make it a priority. China is not going to stop, or Russia or any other foreign country that does not have our best interest at heart. They're not going to stop trying to do what they do best, which is try to invade this country, try to tap our, all of our services that mean so much to this country, and to be shut down on the East Coast and to have the 17 states that are basically out of gas. We're running 50, 55%. North Carolina, our border states, are even higher. But I would say put priorities to the cybersecurity, open up the pipeline, and make it a priority. We only have so much money to go around, and as of today, it's never been a priority, as you can see from the results.
I think you make a fair point that diversification in our fuel supply can only be helpful as we move forward. But also, I hope that we are learning that this is a front on the war that nations will have with each other and rogue agents like we may be dealing with in this case. But certainly, every single supply line becomes a vulnerability when technology is such a critical part of the infrastructure. Now, I want to talk to you a moment about how the states are handling this. 17 states have declared a state of emergency. Very practically, for those who might not understand why that happens, what benefit do states get when they declare a state of emergency on an issue like this?
Well, I'm sure the states will be applying for aid from the federal government. But, the federal government, I think we're running a deficit this year with the spending on the coronavirus, all the spending plans that this president is putting through executive order effectively because Republicans don't have anything to do with it. $6.7 trillion, which is bigger than our budget this year. That is added to the $30 trillion that we're in the red on now. So I'm sure they'll ask for some relief like has been done with the COVID relief, but This is completely avoidable if they had had a priority earlier. And to come out of the pandemic a year and a half and now to face this crisis is too much for the taxpayers to bear, both in their wallet. It's just isn't filling a car up. This is all the products that are delivered to the grocery store, the packages. And so it's a huge pay cut to every American, particularly on the East Coast. So, you know, a lot of conservatives that I serve with in the Freedom Caucus, we're not going to vote for bailout packages. We're done with that. And this administration is on steroids when it comes to spending with no cuts.
Now, we saw early in the coronavirus situation the hoarding that happens of products once people believe there's going to be a shortage. Do you think that declaring a national emergency in any way, or a state of emergency, excuse me, contributes in any way to the psychological impact that has on consumers that leads them to hoard gas? Is that something that maybe in the future shouldn't be done as a way of trying to conserve the supply?
Well, each state has to judge that. And, you know, for a lot of people, it is a national emergency. And that's only been a week now. But I would argue that it's going to take another week to get everything online if it's true that they're going to have it up and running. Gas will be produced and back in the stations all across the Southeast. But it's going to be, you know, when you have that many stations that are completely out of gas, it's just going to take time. Now, is it going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I don't know, but I think it's natural when you see an administration that's just not putting it's not putting any emphasis on it and not making it a priority. You know, for the Biden administration to say that's private and he has nothing to do with it. You know, each one of those 17 states pays taxes to the federal government. And each one of those states have come out of a time period that's like no other in this country that we faced with the coronavirus. So, you know, I think it's a natural thing to do because they see words, but they don't see action.
Now, Secretary Granholm has been helping to manage the federal government's response to this. I want to change subjects with you for a moment because you recently wrote a letter about some investments that she has in an electric vehicle company. Tell us more about that letter and why you thought that was an important issue to raise.
Well, first of all, she's Secretary of Energy. Proterra produces electric cars. They have a plant in Greenville, South Carolina, which is in my home state of South Carolina with roughly 600 employees total. Secretary Granholm has got stock options to the tune of $240,000. She served on the board of directors. She has not divested herself per the ethics committee. She had a president who, oh, by the way, just happened to do a virtual visit, which is, if that's not highly suspicious, is unethical if this thing continues with the president picking companies that the people that he appointed sit on a board. And so, you know, I wrote a letter saying we would like to see, one, your divestiture plan, two, any correspondence that you had with the president, which she says she has none, had no interaction with him coming to doing the virtual tour of Proterra. Joseph, there are 20 other companies that produce electric cars, and probably more if the government mandates that we go to electric cars. But we asked for the paperwork. We asked for any correspondence that she had. From January 20th, which this president was inaugurated. You know, this is May 13th. It's high time we learn something. And I'm on the Oversight Committee, and we'd love to have her testify and give some answers to what I think is a very question, and it's ethical. How she's not looking at it that way, I have no idea why it's a nonchalant issue.
Based on your experience on the Oversight Committee, how big of a problem do you believe self-dealing is in Washington, D.C.?
It's a big problem. That's why politicians are not held in high regard. This is what turns people off in politics. Not only must it be right, it must appear to be right. This is neither. I think if it had been anybody with the Trump administration, the mainstream media would have crucified him and anybody that did that. But no, she owes an answer. You're not talking about a small amount of money. You're talking about something that she has an ethical obligation to explain, and then ultimately to divest herself of the stock options, which, by the way, they just merged with ArcLight for $1.6 billion. And she stands to gain with her stock options a lot of money. And I've heard $5 million, and you can do the math if it goes even higher. But it just, I don't think it is right, and it doesn't appear to be right. And she owes an explanation.
Very quickly, we have about 1 minute left. One final subject. Governor McMaster in South Carolina recently declined federal unemployment benefits beginning at the end of June in order to not compete with companies. What are your thoughts on his decision there? He
did the right thing, Joseph. If businesses all over that can't hire, don't have enough workers, you have equipment that people are paying lease payments on that they can't get anybody to drive them. You have McDonald's stores, which gave me a $13 limit because they had 2 people working in the store. You can multiply that all over South Carolina, and it's not right for government to pay people to sit at home while businesses that pay taxes don't have enough people to run the business.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time and joining us today on Washington Watch. Really